Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is Ichigo Awakens in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 71, Intoxicated Despair. Chad and Tatsuki vs Naritra and Tessera. The espada blocked with his axe as Chad threw an El Directo punch, letting the energy of the attack blast the Septima away. As the energy dissipated, Sato appeared in front of Naritra and used Bringer Light on his hands to enhance his strike by bringing both fists down on his head. Tatsuki, in the meantime, was keeping the Fraction busy. The Aaron car, Tessera, was growing more and more aggravated. His master was having more trouble than he should. They came in when the intruder was weakened by his fight with the Priv, but apparently the Fullbringer was in better condition than they thought. The Fraction got into a blade lock with Tatsuki and looked over to Chad, charging a zero in his eye. The martial artist recognized the energy build-up and who was the proper target. Sato, zero. She yelled out just as Tessera fired his attack. Chad was wrestling Naritra, trying to get the massive axe away from the espada, when Tatsuki called out the warning. He shifted his body weight to turn them around and let Naritra take the brunt of the blast. When the Aaron car's grip slackened for that instant, Chad ripped the weapon out of the espada's hand and slammed the axe down on him. With that chance, Chad used the blade to pin the espada down with his own crescent axe. Master Naritra! Tessera called out in horror. Tatsuki took advantage of the matter by kneeing him in the fork of his legs, making him drop as pain coursed through him, then tore his blade out of his hand and tossed it aside before pinning him on the ground. Gantenbin took the blade and kept a distance away from the group, looking to give his allies an advantage. You bastards! Naritra growled before Chad stomped on his head. Be quiet and listen. The Fullbringer said, ensuring he had the espada's attention. Screw you! Noritora growled out, starting to glow as his power gathered around him. Pray! Santa Teresa! The part of his axe that had pinned him down charged with power, pushing Chad away from him. Tatsuki's grip slackened as she tried to shield her eyes, giving Tessera the chance to free himself as he managed to roll out from under her and charge at Gantenbin. The Priv was too stunned to stop the Fraction from turning his blade around and stabbing him in the stomach. Crush! Veruga! He yelled, becoming cloaked in smoke as he grew in size and transformed. When the dust settled, Chad and Tatsuki saw what their enemies became. Tessera grew into a giant warthog-esque minotaur creature, towering over both of them, while Naritra gained lopsided crescent moon horns and another pair of arms, all of which held scythes. If you were going to say that whole, stay down and I might get to live in the new Lost No Chase after your buddy kills Eisencrap, then you can forget it. The espada roared out. I'm not just here to kill you for intruding, I wanted to draw out that bastard Kurosaki. Chad narrowed his eyes in a glare at the Aaron car as he continued. I know you are one of the weaker members of your team, so I really shouldn't bother, but killing you would definitely net me a fight with that hybrid Eisen is so worried about. I don't care about peace or fighting weaklings, especially ones that have to rely on some bitch's help. Now Tatsuki got pissed. But, if I kill the two of you, then I'll get him to come to me. Then I'll let him in on a little secret, I'm the one responsible for the attack on his house. Would have killed mommy dearest if Ulquiorra didn't stop me. Tatsuki was shaking with rage while Chad seemed to relax. I see, then I guess the only thing left to do here is to show you mercy. The Fullbringer said as he looked at Tatsuki and nodded, signaling her that they had to go all out. Ignite, Hidari. Tatsuki calmly said, gaining her gauntlets and greaves while Chad began to charge himself up. The Fullbringer's arms slowly growing in size. Mercy? Naritra asked as Tessera stood on the opposite side of the pair. Are you looking down on me, you bastards? The mercy we'll show you is the fight you want. Chad answered as his armor extended further over his body. If you followed through with your course of action, Ichigo would destroy you. That wouldn't be a fight, it'd be a slaughter. Naritra continued to glare at the two as they got into their fighting stances. It's for your sake that we kill you here and now. With Bazb. Right, Uriah is in really bad shape. The Heat thought as he carried the unconscious and bleeding Quincy across the desert sands, being careful not to aggravate his already serious wounds. Orium said that if anyone gets this badly injured to take them to her immediately. She's not too far away from here, Ichigo, Tatsuki, And that Sato guy seemed to be busy, not as a decisive win as I would have liked, but this is going fine so far. He had to slow down as he noticed Uriah starting to cough up little mouthfuls of blood. His control is slipping, I'm running out of time. He stopped to safely readjust Uriah to a more stable position on his back when he noticed their guest, a black Aaron car that seemed to be glaring at his companion. And you are? My name is Zamari Rose, I am Espada number 8. The Aaron car said, still glaring at Uriah. I have unfinished business with that Quincy you are carrying. Does this mean you're still sore about being called out on your bullshit? Basby asked, causing Zamari to glare at him now. Yeah, he told me about you and the other Aaron car he had any knowledge on. And let me tell you this, you hollows deserve it. Quincy have the same problem of just taking, but at least we can learn and admit it. My people were born that way and we had to adapt and adjust. Hollows are born from the loss of a heart and become animals. The few hollows I've seen that retained enough sentience to talk are usually cruel and vicious. So, where was Uriah wrong in his statements? Zamari disappeared with Sonito. Shut up, bastard! The Aaron car roared as he was immediately in Basby's guard, plunging his Zanpakuto into the Sternritter's stomach. The blade connected and snapped against the Quincy's blood-reinforced skin. What? The Espada gasped, staring at his broken blade before looking up to Bazard's fingers. I know I should make the offer for you to surrender, but I think Ichigo will understand. Basby said, looking down at the Aaron car with contempt. Burner finger 4. He said before creating a sword of flames and slicing through the Espada's limbs. Okay, double time. I took too much time with this. Basby continued, readjusting Uriah on his back and leaving the crippled and screaming Aaron car behind. With Orium. Okay, they're heading in out direction again. Bambietta reported as Candace managed their transport platform this time. Should be another minute or so. You sure you can heal him? The Explode asked the Exorcist as she finished healing Rukia, who managed to catch up to the group. There's very little I can't heal, Bambi, so long as I can focus. Orium replied, turning her gaze over to where Tatsuki and Chad were currently fighting. Which might actually be a challenge. The Sternritter and Soul Reaper cast their sight in the same direction as Orium, feeling the fluctuations of battle. We have to have confidence in them. Rukia said, trying to cheer up their healer. They've both made tremendous progress since I first met them and your squad doesn't have weak any members. Orium smiled as Rukia tried to boost her confidence, and once again the Quincy thought about their own allies and how many would have the same confidence or even try to help. Both shuddered when they thought of a certain ally and her particular style of help. Sorry I'm late, ran into a roadblock. Basby said, appearing on the platform and gently setting Uriah down. Most of his organs and muscles were crushed. He's barely keeping himself together as it is. Shuno, Ayam, Sutton Kishun. She ordered, making the two spirits come out and double the efficiency of the healing. The outside evidence of the damage began to reverse at a rapid pace, and the Sternritters release a sigh of relief when they felt the spirit threads holding Uriah together release with no consequence. He'll be fine. Thank you for looking after him, Basby. Orium said with a smile, making the Quincy blush. Is this what happens when allies actually care about one another? He wondered to himself, thinking about his old friend, or rather his former friend. No problem. This just leaves Sato and Arisawa, fighting another Espada, and Kurosaki, who seems to be fighting his own battle. He said as a large cloud of dust erupted in the distance. Though if I had to guess, they're just warming up. Ichigo can handle himself. Rukia said, taking charge of the matter as the highest-ranked officer in the group with Uriah still unconscious. For now, let's find Chad and Tatsuki. They'll need healing when they finish their fight. Everyone still awake agreed, and Candace turned them towards the two humans. Chad and Tatsuki vs Naritra and Tessera. Tessera tried again to crush Chad beneath his fist, letting his transformed state's size and power give him the edge against the Fullbringer. Chad caught the fist and dropped slightly, cushioning the force of the blow and using Bringer Light to solidify the sand beneath him to gain a proper foothold. With that, he threw Tessera's fist to the side and threw him down onto the ground. Tessera took the chance to grab onto Chad and slam him against his fist. Coughing in pain as the air was forced from his lungs, Chad could only weather the attacks as Tessera slammed him into the ground and began to crush the Fullbringer in his grip. Chad struggled against Tessera's strength until he freed one of his arms. El Directo! He yelled, blasting the Arrancar in the face and forcing the giant Minobor to drop him. As soon as he landed, he charged right back at Tessera and shot toward the Fraccion's stomach with another El Directo upon contact and sending Tessera back quite a ways. Taking the chance he had now, he turned to see how Tatsuki was doing against Naritra. You bitch! The Espada yelled, swinging his scythes to blow away the flames the martial artist kept using. After the Arrancar released their Zanpakuto, Chad and Tatsuki switched opponents. Chad went to Tessera to match power for power, and Tatsuki to Naritra because the heat of her flames would exhaust him faster. Eat this! Tatsuki yelled, throwing a punch at the Espada. He raised a scythe to block it, while using another of his scythes to shield his face. As he did that he swung his other two scythes at her, which she used to flip over him and strike him in the back. The talons of her greaves left a trail of sparks against his skin, but he was hurting in a different way. Damn it, that burns! He growled as he revealed another pair of arms. One grabbed onto Tatsuki and slammed her into the sands in front of him. There's nothing that disgusts me more than some bitch trying to be on the battlefield. Naritra roared as he got ready to slash Tatsuki to bits, only to be stopped. He was struck with a vicious uppercut from Chad. The Espada was thrown back as the Fullbringer aided his ally. Everything all right? He asked as he helped Tatsuki back to her feet. As she did, they saw Tessera charging at them. Stubborn. Very. Tatsuki agreed as they looked to each other and nodded. The pair ran toward Tessera, with Chad just a little ahead. As the two sides neared each other, Tessera bending over to swipe at them, Tatsuki jumped onto Chad's back and shot toward Tessera's head. She was creating a concentrated fireball on her foot and snapped it at the Warthog mask. Meteor strike. It exploded violently on contact and threw the large Arrancar off balance. That gave Chad his window and he punched the ankle of the Arrancar so hard they heard bone snapping before Tessera collapsed. Funka! Tatsuki said, shooting down onto Tessera, creating a pillar of flames as her fist connected. The air was filled with the roar of flames and screams of agony as Tessera yelled one last thing out. Master Naritra! Forgive me! The Arrancar yelled out as his resurrection form faded away and the real body was consumed in the fire. Tatsuki rose to her feet and glared at the Espada, who managed to return it. Chad noticed this and turned to face his opponent, who promptly fired a Zero from his tongue. Chad just barely managed to transform both of his arms to block the attack, pieces of his shield breaking off against the onslaught. When it ended, Chad went back to his devil's left and giant's right and readied himself for the next bout. What's with that look? Naritra asked the pair, noticing Tatsuki backing off. You think you can beat me just because there's two of you against me now? Seems a little cheap if you ask me, but it doesn't matter. I am the strongest. He yelled out in defiance, pointing a scythe at the Fullbringer. Chad, however, was unimpressed. The strongest? Sato asked sarcastically. I heard that the Espada were ranked by power and you are the 7th Espada. Doesn't that mean that there are 6 that are stronger than you? Naritra glared at the Fullbringer as he continued. I also get the feeling that if I was worse off from my fight with Gantenbin, you wouldn't hesitate to try and strike me down. A sound strategy, but hardly one that would cement your strength in this world. Chad could sense the growing anger in the Arrancar as he continued. Landing the killing blow or fighting an already weakened opponent doesn't prove that you're stronger, only that you cheat yourself on your quest for the title of strongest. Naritra had enough and lashed out at Chad, who circled behind the Arrancar with bringer light. Who the hell are you to lecture me? The Espada roared, swinging 3 of his scythes at Chad and trapping him between his blades. You need some bitch's help just to fight me. Chad slammed his head against Naritra's and the two were locked in. I don't care what it takes, I'll kill everyone till I'm the strongest. He continued, 2 hands dropping their scythes to impale Chad's body. Starting with you and that friend of yours. The Espada pulled back as Chad dropped to his knees, bleeding quite a lot from the holes in his sides. The Arrancar regained his bloodthirsty smirk as he raised a scythe, ready to decapitate the Fullbringer. In Chad's mind, he heard his grandfather's voice. You weren't given this strength to hurt others. The old adage that Chad learned to live his life by, once again motivating him to pull out whatever laid within him to fight and protect. He clenched his right fist as threw his strongest punch to date. As it connected with Naritra's stomach, Sato's coin glowed and there was a bright flash just before the Aaron car was sent flying into one of the stone pillars and causing it to collapse. Chad was panting for breath while his arms glowed, feeling a drain on his soul. Naritra soon rose from the rubble, glaring at Sato. "You bastard!" he growled, wincing as he felt pain throughout his body. "He managed to fracture a couple of my ribs there," he thought, assessing his internal damage. "I'll kill yo dash," he growled before a wave of heat washed over him. He turned to see Tatsuki standing in the center of an inferno. "Shunko," he heard the martial artist say before she flashed in front of him and slammed her armored fist into his face. What followed was a massive blast of fire that started from her fist and continued burning until he was shot away from her because of the pressure. As the fire died, Tatsuki collapsed from exhaustion and Naritra felt his life leave him. "All my power, and I die because of some bitch," he mentally roared in rage. His arrow did well to protect him from physical attacks, but the heat from Tatsuki's attacks bypassed that defense and roasted him. He was trying to get to his feet before he was pulled up by one of his arms and came face to face with Chad once again. "My mercy for you is now complete," Chad said as he changed his arms. "Brazos Dobles, Diablo." He slammed his fists into Naritra's sides, causing a colliding shockwave that destroyed the espada's insides. The last thing Naritra could consciously feel as he began choking on his own blood, was regret. Ichigo vs Grimjo. The clashes were explosive as each side struck at the other. Grimjo in his resurrection and Ichigo with his two zanjutsu. The two danced a lethal routine, strikes aimed to kill, blasts aimed at vitals, but neither had an edge over the other. They kept that up. All around them was a wasteland, scarred by the clash of the warriors. They took the chance to pause and breath. "You've certainly gotten better, Grimjo," Ichigo said, honestly meaning that after considering their first encounter. "What about the offer I've been making to each Aaron car I've come across?" The panther scratched his head in thought. "When we first met, you really pissed me off, Kurosaki," the espada said, looking the hybrid in the eye. "There was a confidence and cockiness that just set me off because I saw you as a kid that was overconfident. Then you proved me wrong and kicked my ass. Afterward I was punished and humiliated for my failures and I wanted nothing more than to kill you. Then I was offered a way, to gain the power I needed to fight you again, but it came at a cost. Every espada represents an aspect of death. Mine is destruction. And I was told that if I wanted the power I so desired, I had to throw away everything and embrace my aspect. So here's my deal, tame me, quell my thirst for destruction, then I will join you." As he was talking, his hair was slowly turning black and his armor fell off to reveal more black covering his entire body, shining like obsidian, and a truly feral snarl on his face. Resurrection, Segunda Etapa. Chapter 72, Quelled Destruction. With Aizen. Segunda Etapa. Aizen mused, tapping a finger on the arm of his chair as he watched the battle between Ichigo and Grimjo with his attack force. A second stage release for Aaron Carr. He turned his gaze to the fourth espada standing off to the side of the throne room. "I assume you knew about this since you trained him. Am I right?" Ulquiorra turned to face his master and bowed his head. "I attained that state when I fully embraced my aspect of death a long time ago," the Aaron Carr said as the two clashed. "I abandoned everything about myself, or so I think, and became empty. A vessel to serve you, Lord Aizen. I kept quiet about it should I ever need an ace against my opponent. Or to completely crush their will to fight." He turned back to watch the fight between Ichigo and Grimjo. "Unfortunately, that no longer seems like an option. You should have shared this information sooner." Baragan grumbled as Stark and Lilynet entered the room. "The stronger we are, the better our chances in the coming fights." "It would have been useful," Haribal said, "though if Ulquiorra is truly right about how to attain it, then it would make it nearly impossible to be allies. Or to even fight in some cases." She thought of her own aspect of sacrifice and Baragan's aspect of aging. Some seemed impossible to actually achieve or should be achieved simply for power. It makes little difference now. Aizen said, rising from his throne. Ulquiorra, you know what you must do. Everyone else, let us be off. When he finished, Tuan opened a Garganta with Karakura town as their destination. Ulquiorra watched as the battalion of 17, 14 Arrancar and 3 Soul Reapers, left through the dimensional portal and leaving him alone. He turned back to watch Ichigo, feeling an uncomfortable tightness in his chest. Ichigo. With the rest of the team. Uriah flexed his hand before rising from his where he laid, grunting in pain as his body screamed in protest for the action. He turned to see Chad and Tatsuki in the healing field with him as Candace flew them around the concentration of destruction that was Ichigo's fight. Just because the damage was being reversed did not mean they didn't take. Orium continued to heal while the Stern Ritters focused on proceeding toward the building where they felt the twins' riot. So, how much longer before they're good to fight? Basby asked, watching the healing in progress. I feel 3 more Espada in this place. And a whole lot of them disappearing, Bambietta remarked as they felt many riots disappearing. What the hell is happening? Please stop, I need to focus. Orium all but shouted as she returned to her task. This requires emotional stability and focus. She thought she was getting better at this, but seeing her friends in such conditions served as a reminder that she's in a war and her friends aren't invincible. Kind of rattled her a bit, but her friends did regain consciousness and Uriah was the only one still healing. Heads up. Candace called out, directing their focus to a massive skeletal mangrove tree with an army of human skull-masked figures coming from its branches. What the hell is that thing? I am Rudborn Keelut. A voice called out, bringing their attention to the center of the top of the tree. In it was a man with a bowl-shaped skull with branches wrapped around his body and a lightning bolt-shaped stick in his hand. Like Runuganga protects the outside, I am tasked with protecting the inside. Killing rebellious elements and intruders. He said as the army prepared to fight. Gantenbin and Sirachi jumped off the platform and readied their weapons. Go on, we got this. The Afro Arrancar said, moving his mask over his eyes. I already betrayed Lord Aizen by joining you, might as well go all the way. Sirachi admitted, spinning her disc blade. I'd rather die fighting anyway. Any idea what his power is? Basby asked, refusing to sit out and deciding to stand by his allies. Any of them. I spawn an endless army. Rudborn said as another 10 figures came from his branches. Do they have souls? Candace asked as she and Bambi joined Basby. Orium created a shielded platform with Santon Kesshun while maintaining the healing process. No why? The Quincy grinned as they manifested their spirit weapons. No reason. Basby said as the Quincy and Arrancar then began walking toward the army. Orium. Gantenbin called out. That central pillar over there is where they have the girls you are here for. He pointed at the tower that they were heading towards. They'll likely have another Espada guarding them, so get ready for a fight. Sirachi said before swinging her weapon and smashing it into the crowd. You better keep your promise. She yelled before Orium started flying them toward the tower. Ichigo vs Grimmjow. The battle was fierce. Grimmjow was operating almost completely on instinct and its call of primal destruction with Ichigo defending against every strike. The panther slammed his claws into the hybrid, Ichigo blocking with his dual blades, and sending him flying into the air. The impact smashed Ichigo through buildings and pillars, creating shockwaves that sent the loose sand flying across the desert and turning the shifting grounds into a deep pit as a result. Desgarin. The Espada roared as he unleashed a frenzy of swipes, each one creating a set of Reishi blades that flew at Ichigo. Some dodged, some blocked, few that cut through his clothes and his skin. 10 blades pushed him back several meters before he broke them and locked eyes with Grimmjow, just as the Espada bit into his lip. He gathered Reishi in front of his mouth, forming a blue sphere of power before unleashing it in a mighty roar. The enhanced Zero crossed the distance in an instant and in that same instant, Ichigo's body moved for him. The smaller Zanjutsu blade was generating an aura similar to a seal Schneider that rose and cut through the Zero. When the blast ended, the cut-off Reishi was absorbed into both Zanjutsu blades, making them glow red and blue as hollow and Quincy blades pulsated with power. Guess I won't reach the point where you don't need to watch my back. Ichigo thought, knowing that his Zanpakuto moved him on instinct, with the blades humming in response. I'm okay with that. He brought his kyber blade to one of his cuts and gathered some blood onto it, charging it with power. At the same time he did that, Grimjo appeared with another Gran Ray Zero at the ready. Gran Ray Getchuga Tensho, Ichigo said, swinging his blade as Grimjo fired his blast. The resulting explosion cracked the walls of Las Noches, blew a massive hole in the domed roof, and shook Hueco Mundo for miles. With Ichigo's friends, Orium flew them toward the palace at high speeds, panting from the mental exhaustion of maintaining her transport barrier and healing her friends. Uriah was now physically recovered, same with everyone else, but he still felt the after-effects of his Volstandig. He doubted he could fight another Espada in that condition, but a part of him didn't feel too concerned. Chad seemed to get stronger and whatever Ichigo was doing seemed to be pacifying most of the hollows. They kept riding in silence, heading for the main tower, until they noticed something ahead of them. Of course, it can't be easy. Uriah groaned as most of the teens recognized Yami Largo. He was just standing in front of the building, tall and rigid as he waited for his opponents. When he recognized that they saw him, he grinned maliciously and began to charge toward them. Chad rose to his feet as Orium kept them moving, planning to dodge the charging Aaron car. Go on ahead, I'll take care of this. The Fullbringer said, jumping off the transport before anyone could say anything. The second his feet touched the ground, he activated his Fullbring and used Bringer Light to run past his friends and straight to the Espada. The two met midway and threw a punch at the other, Chad using Lamu to match the sheer power of the giant Aaron car, creating a shockwave of force and buying the rest of the teens enough time to fly past them and into the tower. Pretty gutsy of you, human, Yami said with a cocky grin, but I've been waiting for another crack at you. Chad looked up to the Aaron car and noted something off. You seem bigger than last time. The Fullbringer said, trying to remember their last fight. Yeah, I had to hold back when we last met. But now I've been given permission to go all out. He said, placing a hand on his Zanpakuto and releasing his Ryotsu. On top of that, I've been eating and napping, conserving my power for this. Though you'll do as an appetizer for that hybrid bastard. I haven't forgotten how he humiliated me the first time we met. Chad's eyes widened as Yami continued to grow. But you still piss me off. In rage, IRA. He roared, pulling out his Zanpakuto and began to transform. He grew bigger and bigger, the jacket on his back flying off and revealing his 10 tattoo with a disintegrating one. What the? Chad gaped as Yami went from a really big humanoid to a gargantuan behemoth, 8 massive elephant-like legs with a giant tail with large club, and massive cylinders on his forearms and back. When he finished, Chad felt like an ant facing a mountain. Let me properly introduce myself. Yami said, his voice echoing due to the distance. I am Yami Largo, Espada number 0. The Espada raised his fist and brought it down. Now die. Ichigo vs Grimjo. He laid there, panting in exhaustion, having used up the last of his Reishi in an effort to best his opponent. The land around them was scorched black, burning hot from the aftermath of the blasts of energy while the space above them was still distorted. A figure stood above him, dark in his vision from blurry eyes and the figure's shadow. All of his power, all the effort to get stronger, and he still lost. A former version would be furious, but now he was calm. Almost happy about getting trounced so thoroughly. Good enough for you, Grimjo? Ichigo asked, only breathing a little heavier as a result of their fight. The fallen panther started chuckling, growing into a barking laughter. I really can't beat you, can I? The Aaron car finally said, still laughing. Can anyone really? What the hell are you? He finally calmed down, pushing himself up to a seated position and coming face to face with Ichigo's outstretched hand. He took it, reverted back to his normal state, and knelt before his new king. My hand is yours. You command, and I will obey. Is it going to be like this with every Aaron car I turn to my side? Ichigo asked as Grimjo rose to his feet. Then he sensed an incoming attack and sidestepped, dodging a bala that came down at him. Ichigo looked up to see a massive gash in the canopy of Hueco Mundo, with a familiar face staring down at him. Ulquira. He said, some measure of regret coloring his tone. You might have to kill him, Ichigo. The former Espada told his new leader. Out of all the Arrancar, he's probably the most loyal to Aizen. Let's test that, Ichigo thought as he shot up towards the bat. With Uryu, Tatsuki, and Orium, the trio ran through the halls of the palace, searching for the twins Ryutsu, and ready to fight whichever Arrancar had them. They felt the fight between Ichigo and his opponent end with a climatic explosion while Chad seemed to get outmatched when Yami transformed. Even now, as they ran toward their destination, they were debating whether to run back and help their friend. That came to an end when two more female Arrancar barred their way. One was slender with black hair and pigtails and her mask covering her left eye, dressed in a sleeveless shirt that exposed her cleavage and stomach with a frilly skirt and thigh-high boots. The other was more tomboyish with blonde hair and her right eye covered by her mask, wearing a short-sleeved shirt and hakama pants. This is the end of the road for you, the black-haired girl said, smirking menacingly at the trio. Lord Aizen made it clear that he's keeping the girls, said the tomboy as both girls drew their blades. The three friends shared a quick glance, holding a silent conversation on how the fight would go, except Orium walked ahead of them and stood before the Arrancar. Go on ahead. I'll handle this, she said, pulling out Masamune. Tatsuki was about to protest, but Uryu held up his hand, pointing ahead. Tatsuki reluctantly nodded as the two disappeared on the other side of the Arrancar and continued running. Hey! The black-haired Arrancar yelled out before a barrier blocked her way. She turned to glare at Orium, who was lowering her arm. You bitch! She hissed as she got into a combat stance, holding her dagger at the ready. Pretty gutsy to fight us 2-on-1. The blonde said, holding out her katana. I'm Mainoli Malia, Arrancar number 34 and she's number 33, Loli Ivirn. Mainoli greeted as Orium got into the stance that Anohana taught her. Squad 15 6th seat, Orium Inu. The exorcist returned. And it's not 2-on-1. She said as the 6 spirits of her Shunrika formed behind her, along with the androgynous forms of the 4 elemental spirits. It's 12-on-2. With Ichigo. He was back in the eternal night of Hueco Mundo, standing on the top of the domed palace, standing across from him. His old friend, his current enemy, the last barrier between him and his sisters. He felt everything that was going on beneath him, but his friends trained to get strong and they could handle themselves. His teacher's words echoed in his mind, that a leader must have as much faith in his allies as they do him. They followed him because they believed he could conquer Hueco Mundo, and they separated because he believed they could survive. Did you know that it would come down to this? He asked, looking the shorter Arrancar in the eye. I did. Ulquiorra answered, unsheathing his blade. I think, back when we first met, I knew you would become strong. Lord Aizen gave this task to me when I revealed our past. He pointed his blade at the hybrid. To kill you, Ichigo Kurosaki. And you're just going to go along with it? Ichigo asked, not showing any anger or grief. Just meeting Ulquiorra with a similar calm. To kill an old friend. You're a soul reaper and I am a hollow Ichigo. He was saying before Ichigo cut him off. Don't try that line with me, Ulquiorra. You follow a Shinigami's orders when you obey Aizen. The hybrid stated. I've got Quincy and Hollow to me, something that should have been a death sentence in Soul Society, and they plan to make me the future leader of the Godai forces. I'm also not lying to the Arrancar, I will kill Aizen and I will usher in a new era for them. Now, you can try your luck against me, Ulquiorra, but I think we both know how this will end. The two just stared at each other, waiting for the next move. In close, Mercy Lago. The Espada said, gaining bat wings and a full helm. Resurrection, Segunda Etapa. He finished, losing his coat while his arms and lower body was covered in a black fur, with his hollow hole looking like it was bleeding blackness. Ichigo's response was to unsheath both of his zanjutsu. Bring it. World of the living. It was a normal sunny day in Karakura town. The town was peaceful and quiet, resting comfortably behind multiple barriers that kept it concealed in the furthest edges of Soul Society. In the world of the living was a perfect copy of the city, where every captain of the Godai stood ready with their most able fighters. The veteran warriors only reacted when the Gargantes appeared, signaling the arrival of Aizen and his army. 4 holes appeared to let out the army of 17, ready to do battle against the defense force of over twice their number at 35. Is this it, Aizen? Yamamoto asked, looking down on the upstart that began this war. Is this all you bring to battle? Surely this is not what you planned. The smug look on Aizen's face was only marred with a measure of irritation. True, this is not ideal for me, the king of Hueco Mundo admitted. I'd much rather have several captains trapped in Hueco Mundo as well. But Ichigo Kurosaki has grown stronger than I had planned for. Are you sure you can beat me without him? He said as he, Jin, and Tuan unsheathed their Zanpakuto. Almost everyone here is affected by my Shikai, and I'm sure you know how strong I am. I give that boy 5 minutes at least before he shows up and kicks your ass, Aizen. Ishine said with a grin. Then I'll just have to kill you in that time frame. Aizen said. His army charged forward. The Winter War had begun. With Urayu and Tatsuki. The rest of the run was silent, cursing themselves for leaving their friends behind, raging at their current weaknesses, but they persevered. Focused on the task of recovering Ichigo's little sisters and the final traces of Aizen's army left in the castle. There was one Espada left that was ahead of them, curiously much weaker than before. They doubled their efforts and found an open door that had several bodies, similar to the soldiers of Rudborn Kilut. They got ready to fight and entered the room to find it filled with more bodies, covered in scorch marks, scratches, holes, and blood. The sole exception was a single door, guarded by an exhausted Nilil and her fraction. The Espada met the human's gaze. I was told to take care of the girls, she told them, before falling down. Chapter 73, once empty, now filled. Orium vs Loli and Mainoli. Katanzan Shun, Waltz. Orium called out, splitting Tsubaki into 6 sprites that flew toward the 2 Aaron car. Understanding it was an attack, the 2 used Sonido to trap Orium between them. Loli was in front and poised to stab Orium while Mainoli was behind and ready to behead the girl. Orium dropped to the floor, pressing her hand against the stone. Terra, now! She shouted as the ground around her caved, causing the 2 Aaron car to tumble and fall. The 2 just barely escaped the trap and put some room between them and Orium. That bitch! Loli hissed, trying to think of a new strategy. Our intelligence didn't say anything about her beyond having spirits on her side. Mainoli said, wanting to talk some sense into her friend. She's not just a normal human. Orium stood back up and glared at her opponents, almost daring them to make a move. Right. Should have done this from the start. Loli said as the 2 looked at each other and nodded. Poison, Escalopendra. Sting, a scorpion. The girls yelled and transformed. Loli grew armor over most of her body while her arms became like centipedes, long and segmented, and something a tad more unsettling from the way they moved. Mainoli developed a similar armor, but with a long scorpion tail and pincer-shaped punch daggers. The 2 insectoid Aaron car glared at the exorcist before making their strike. Terra, wall! She ordered quickly, the spirit raising the earth in front of her to create a barrier. Ventus, let's get around them. She told the wind spirit as they used their speed technique to get behind Loli and Mainoli. She paid rapt attention as the 2 Aaron car destroyed the stone wall. Loli's centipede arms seemed to be covered in a corrosive poison that ate away at whatever remained from her bashing the wall. Mainoli was spraying her poison from the barb on her tail, but both made minimal progress from the spirit-reinforced rock. That's when Loli screamed out in frustration before unleashing her Zero. Where are you? Loli screamed out in frustration, scanning the debris to try and find her missing quarry. Mainoli looked around behind them, just in time for Orium to charge forward and attack. Mainoli managed to evade, but her tail was almost completely severed. Her screams alerted Loli, who swung at Orium. The girl had no time to dodge and feebly rose Masamune to block the attack, the segmented arm slamming against the edge of the blade. The exorcist braced for a pain that never came, and when she opened her eyes, she saw Loli looking in disbelief as her arms were now almost stumps of their former selves. That was close. Orium heard someone saw as a more neatly dressed and tanned version of Muramasa stood in front of her, holding the Masamune blade. You have gotten better, Lady Orium, but you still have some growing to do. I guess I'm still too gentle to really fight. Orium sighed looking at the spirit, while the Arrancar screamed in pain. "Let's finish this Masamune," she ordered, flicking her and glowing with spiritual power. The spirit nodded as he charged forward. "Aqua, bubble!" Orium commanded as the Arrancar got ready for a second assault. Before they could do anything, they were trapped in spheres of water. Helpless before Masamune as he cut off their limbs so quickly that neither realized they were hurt. Orium stood before them as they glared at the exorcist, trying to kill her with their looks. The girl merely sighed. "Shuno, Ayam. Sutan Kishun," she ordered as the two spirits turned into their healing sprites and enveloped the Arrancar just as Aqua's bubbles drained away. "You bitch. When I get out of this I'll dash." Loli tried to threaten but was repelled when her head touched the barrier. "I really hate hurting people," Orium said, sitting down in front of the two. "That's why I need my spirit friends to help me fight. Even then, I don't like killing," she said, trying to convey kindness. "What you're in will heal you, but my comrades are not so generous as to spare your lives." The healing process was moving very slowly, almost as if it wasn't happening at all while the pain finally registered to the Arrancar. "I insist you take Ichigo's offer. I'm not sure how long I can wait." A group of exequious Arrancar appeared behind Orium and were quickly engulfed in a torrent of flames. "My friends are waiting for me after all," she said with a smile that sent shivers down the girls' spines. Ichigo vs Ulquiorra. The air shook and ground trembled as the two did battle. The black and empty bat against the hybrid protector, former friends, and now enemies, fighting for their own reasons. Ulquiorra, as per his orders, and Ichigo, as per his nature to recover and protect his sisters. Those that could keep up with the two could see the pair flashing about in the sky over Las Noches, matching swing for swing and blow for blow. To those that knew the fighters, something felt off about the fight. "Come on Ichigo," Ulquiorra thought as he swung his tail like a whip, only for Ichigo to duck underneath and into his guard, making him catch Ichigo's blades in his talons and kicking off the hybrid's chest. "You have to kill me. We both know this." He dashed toward Ichigo, who jumped over his head and threw him down, sending Ulquiorra to the dome of Las Noches while his tail smacked Ichigo in the face, which sent the hybrid flying into one of the castle's towers. The espada rose to his feet while Ichigo had to pry himself out of the rubble of the collapsing building. "I know my duty, you know yours. So why are you hesitating?" He brought his hands together and pulled them apart, creating a long lance of glowing green reishi that burned with energy. "Lanza del Relámpago," he said before aiming and throwing the burning lance at Ichigo. "Don't be stubborn Ulquiorra," Ichigo shouted, shrouding himself in reishi before catching the lance in his own claws as he was now covered in his hollow armor. "I'm giving you a choice. Live or die, me or Aizen." He growled as the lance burned in his hands, slowly converting and taking control of the attack. "Why are you so loyal to Aizen anyway? He only uses people, he doesn't care about the Arrancar," he shouted as Ulquiorra appeared before Ichigo again, with another energy lance in hand, giving Ichigo almost no time to block as the lance pierced through his armor and deep into the hybrid's chest. He made it clear he was different from other Soul Reapers. Ulquiorra said, wrapping his tail around Ichigo's neck. "You joined them. You are the one being used, you told me that yourself that you were training solely to kill someone." He knew he could lay a killing blow on Ichigo, snap his neck, blow a hole through his chest, but he hesitated and Ichigo punched him away. As the Arrancar reoriented himself, he saw Ichigo take the lance in his chest and finished what he was doing with the previous spear. He watched as Ichigo took the unstable energies and solidified them into actual spears, almost as if he perfected the technique. He held up one and threw it to Ulquiorra, strong enough to reach him but not enough to hurt him. The bat caught it and charged at Ichigo, who mirrored the action, going from fighting with claws and swords to spears. "And when you stop being useful, he'll toss you aside." Ichigo returned, dodging a thrust from Ulquiorra while sweeping at his legs and making the Arrancar fly off. "I am training to kill someone Ulquiorra, someone stronger than Aizen, but not because I want to. Because I have to. If I can't kill the man I'm training to kill, then everyone is doomed. Souls, humans, hollows, all of them." Ulquiorra pointed at Ichigo and shot a pitch-black zero at Ichigo, who thrust his spear forward and fired his own Zero from the spear tip. I'm fighting to protect everyone I can. You stood by my side once before, why are you so intent on killing me now? He shouted as the blasts collided and exploded, destroying the dome of Las Noches. Because you chose to go where I couldn't follow. Chad vs Yami. The Fullbringer was on the defensive because nothing he did had any affect. Yami shrugged off all of his punches and overpowered him in every contest of strength. The main and only reason Chad didn't become a bloodstain on the desert sands yet is because he was too fast for Yami. With continuous use of Bringer Light, he was able to outspeed and outmaneuver the giant Espada. Not helping the Aaron Carr was his own rage, making him predictable. Chad dodged around Yami's oncoming fist to land on his elongated back, where the Aaron Carr's tail was coming down to crush him, and only managed to slam into his own spine. Gah! Yami yelled, feeling the aftershocks of his own attacks. Chad landed at the small of Yami's back, gasping for breath. Looks like the only thing that can really hurt him is himself. Sato thought, trying to think of any plan, any way for him to beat the Espada. His thoughts were interrupted when Yami's hand came out of nowhere and grabbed him. The Fullbringer struggled against Giant's crushing grip, but he was at Yami's mercy. His stomach lurched as the fist that held him shifted and brought him to the front before tossing him in the air and catching him again, this time right side up so Yami could look him in the eye. You've been really annoying, flashing around like that. The Espada said, glaring at his prey as it struggled against him. But I gotta admit, you've got guts trying to challenge me like that. Chad continued to squirm and struggle, slowly getting his arms freed. As a token to your bravery, you can choose how you die. He managed to pry one hand out of the death grip and was working on the second. But, I'm also a little curious. Most trash run off when they face me or simply die. Why did you stick around? What makes you think you can fight me? He asked as Chad freed both of his arms. El Directo! He shouted, shooting his blasts into both of Yami's eyes. Proving that they were still vulnerable, the Zero Espada dropped the Fullbringer to grasp his eyes in pain. Taking his chance, Chad jumped back to get some distance the same instant Yami removed his hands, still squinting from the damage. I'll be honest, I don't think I can beat you. Yami wanted to crush the arrogant bug instantly, but he couldn't deny his curiosity in what Chad had to say. Something that he could use to push the trash to despair when he crushes the life out of it in front of him. It's obvious you're stronger than me, tougher than me, the only reason I'm still alive is because I'm faster than you. But it's not that I can't fight you, it's that I can't back down. So what? Yami asked, his vision getting clearer by the second. You keep fighting because of some sense of honor. I made a promise to my friend. He explained as his medallion began to glow. That I would always have his back. The only way to stop him is to kill him, and I'd be there to keep that from happening. The sand began to shift away from Sato as his spirit seemed to change. You want to kill my friend, stand in his way, threaten everything he loves. I won't let you. Even if it kills me, I have to beat you. Here and now. He looked up to Yami as his Ryotsu exploded into a pillar of light. I still have no idea what this is, but now's as good a time as any. I'll tell Kisuke about it later. He thought as the energy seemed to turn into a liquid and take shape before turning solid. It had 4 arms, 2 Gigante and 2 Diablo, had a mix of all the colors of his arms decorating its form, and had a pair of curved horns on its head. It matched Yami in size and Chad saw through its eyes as well as his own. Diablo Gigante. With Urayu and Tatsuki. There was only silence as the group let the Espada rest while they removed all the bodies, and only after the teens confirmed the state of the twins did any tension ease. Yuzu and Karen were resting soundly in what seemed to be an induced sleep while the Espada guarded them, Urayu thanking his father again for including everything necessary to be a doctor in his education. With the bodies out of the way, Tatsuki went inside to wake up the girls while Urayu got ready to speak with the Aaron Carr, getting a Springer trap ready to blow them up if necessary. Urayu took the chance to look over the trio. The green-haired girl that still slept was clearly the Espada of the group, but the other 2 were off. Their faces were completely obscured by their masks and they didn't wear the usual white every other Aaron Carr had, in fact they were closer to hollows than Aaron Carr. The one with the beetle mask had white armor on his chest, arms, and shins, with most of his body being purple and a loincloth giving him any modesty. The one with the tiki mask was wearing a yellow bodysuit covered with black polka dots. It took every ounce of self-control Uriah had not to go into tailoring mode as he finished his observations. "Thanks for not immediately attacking us," the beetle, Pesha, said to Uriah. "Lady Nell took the majority of the assassins and she's still not in full fighting shape. Some fraction we are." The Tiki, Dondakaka, continued. "We couldn't protect her back when she was the third Espada, and we still couldn't protect her now. Sounds like there's some history of distrust among the Arankar," Uriah noted as the two continued. "Lady Nell, all three of us really, we aren't fighters," Pesha said, taking over the conversation. Lady Nelil hated fighting, only doing so for what she deemed a good reason, unlike another Espada by the name of Naritra. Uriah nodded, recognizing the name of the Arankar Chad and Tatsuki fought. One day Naritra conspired with another Arankar to betray Lady Nell, using Dondakaka and I as bait. They tore off our masks and ambushed Lady Nell. "Such a dirty trick, Donchano," Dondakaka wailed, somehow producing tears. "And we were abandoned in the deserts of Hueco Mundo," the beetle continued. "For some reason, Lady Nelil was turned into a child and we thought it best to let her live in peace since she hated fighting anyway. But then Aizen reclaimed her, saying he had a new need for her, and restored her as the sixth Espada. Lady Nell was loyal because Aizen was bringing order to the lawless world of hollows. Dondakaka took over. And she took over watching over the girls because Aizen swore their safety. That ended when the Exequias appeared and said their orders were to deliver them to Sailaporo for experimentation. The Espada said as she rose from her slumber, her fraction helping her up. I heard your companion, Ichigo I think, was trying to recruit the Arankar to his side. Is this true? Uriah nodded. It is. There is a greater threat than Aizen coming and Soul Society has decided to make allies with the Arankar. Ichigo Kurosaki is to take the throne of Las Noches, since he is the closest thing to a hollow among the court guard squads. Will he be a just king? Nelil asked, narrowing her eyes at Uriah and trying to divulge the truth from him in any way. Don't worry Nelly. They heard as Yuzu and Karen appeared with Tatsuki, back in their attire before being kidnapped. Ichi-nii will be a great king. Yuzu kept cheering. Though he may want to punish you for being the one to hold us captive. Karen said with an obvious emphasis on the word punish. The result was a blushing Uriah and Tatsuki while Nell enthusiastically cheered. I'm in. Ichigo vs Ulquiorra. The fighting continued, wrecking the walls of Las Noches and sending devastating blasts across the desert sands, and still at a stalemate. Ulquiorra unable to land a killing blow and Ichigo still trying to reach through to his old friend. The Arankar slashed with his spear, cutting off Ichigo's arm while the hybrid countered by punching the bat in the stomach during his regeneration. Ichigo grabbed Ulquiorra's neck in a crushing grip and the bat ripped him off with a hard strike from his tail. Why are you holding back? Ulquiorra wondered, knowing that Ichigo was not going all out. He did not use any Kido, actual Hakuda moves, Quincy arts, just countering the Espada with his own prowess as a hollow. I made my vow and you must kill me to reclaim your sisters. I'm not your ally. He growled mentally, slowly losing himself to his more violent emotions which Ichigo was not prepared for. Ulquiorra's strikes became faster, more erratic, less predictable, and more vicious. He knocked Ichigo's spear out of his hands and used the blade to slash up Ichigo's chest to ribbons before using his tail to throw Ichigo down onto the desert sands. As the hybrid flew toward the ground, Ulquiorra charged a Siro to the tip of his spear and shot it down to Ichigo the second he collided with the sand. The blast slammed into the hybrid and caused a massive explosion, Ulquiorra panting from the effort and growling when the smoke faded. Ichigo still lived, and he was looking at the bat with pity. Ulquiorra. He called out, prompting the Espada flash in front of Ichigo and attack again. This time, Ichigo did not dodge. He just stood there and weathered the attack. Stop trying to change fate Ichigo. Ulquiorra growled, slashing and pummeling the hybrid. This is the way of things. Soul Reapers kill Hollows, Hollows kill Soul Reapers. He roared as his hands broke with every strike on his enemy. I can't believe in this world you say you'll create. I only trust what I see. He roared as Ichigo gave him a harsh shove, making the empty bat glare at him. Then kill me. Ichigo ordered, holding his hands out and displaying every vulnerability he could. If it is fate, kill me. Ulquiorra's hand tightened around his spear and let out a mighty roar, throwing the lance at the hybrid, and dropping to his knees as the missile missed its mark. Ichigo said nothing as he walked toward Ulquiorra, who reached up to his face as he felt an unfamiliar wetness. Am I crying? Why does my chest ache? He thought as Ichigo stood before him. Ichigo, what is the heart? He asked, begged for an answer. I don't think I can really answer that. Ichigo responded, looking down on the espada. Everyone has a different idea. I think it's the force that drives a person to complete their goals, to feel for others, to achieve what a person never thought was possible. Ichigo held out his hand to Ulquiorra. It's what pushes me to defy your so-called fate and save you. Ulquiorra looked at Ichigo's hand and saw the small child that he once protected years ago. I see now. I was always waiting for you to return. He thought as he reached out to the offered hand. My destiny is to serve, but I found a false king. He freed my mouth and ears, but you gave me a voice and heard me long before anyone else. Aizen made me acceptable, but you accepted me before anyone. I am yours to command. My king. He said, looking up to see Ichigo smiling down at him. The same smile he wore when they first met. And his heart sank as a hand erupted from Ichigo's chest. Chapter 74, The Winter War, Fraction of the Arrogant. False Karakura Town. As the two sides charged toward each other, a massive bulbous thing appeared through another garganta. Before anyone could process what was happening, the Arrancar and Soul Reapers clashed. Dozens of blades clashed against each other along with the smacks of pounding flesh as fists and kicks struck their targets, all while the massive creature split open and released a massive torrent of blackness that was filled with Jillian masks that soon formed into Jillian soldiers. The swarm was quickly countered by Byakuya unleashing his Zanpakuto's power as his hundreds of thousands of blades tear them apart. Komamura immediately sought out Tuan and singled him out for combat, dragging him away from the rest of the battles with his astral bolus. Yamamoto wasted no time and immediately charged at Aizen with Shunsui and Juushiro backing him up, though Jin intercepted the two while Wonder Weiss immediately engaged Yamamoto. Stark lazily jumped around until he was caught off guard by his Hein. Chaos reigned as the forces blend and mixed in combat. Baragon's Fraction. 6 Arrancar charged at 6 Shinigami, ready to fight to the death for their king and his ideals while the others fought to defend the world from destruction. As soon as the groups neared each other, a girl cheerfully said bye-bye before 8 people were engulfed in black smoke and sent all over the battlefield to have their fights. Homura and Shizuka stood side by side, facing the 2 Arrancar they decided to fight. Joe Vega, a slim and youthful Arrancar with a saber-toothed cat skull mask on his head in Mandarin-style robes, and Nirga Parduok, a large and heavy-set Arrancar with a thick helmet that had small tusks on the sides. So, which one do you want to play with, Shizuku? Homura asked, pulling out her Tonto dagger. Why, let them think it'll be one-on-one. Shizuka returned, pulling out his katana. You know how we fight. For fun. The sister returned cheerfully. Flow, Sikuken. Homura's Tonto rippled like water before curving like a snake's fang with a snake head guard. As playful as ever, sis. Shizuka sighed. I think the only time you were quiet was after you went the Kukaki house when Ichigo had dash, he was saying before Homura stomped on his foot, blushing furiously. Right. Engulf, Moku. Shizuka winced as he spun his transforming sword until he held a long black scythe. You really think you stand a chance, Soul Reapers? Vega asked, smirking at the two mockingly. A scrawny boy and a girl with no chest to speak of. Nirga groaned, disappointed in the matchup. What a letdown. The two were about to charge when the siblings disappeared from their sight and only dodged when their primal instincts roared at them to move. They dodged the swinging scythe blade that would have claimed their heads, only to brush with death when Homura spun out from between them and missing their vital neck veins as they dodged again. Homura and Shizuka Shiba. Homura said, losing the childish glee she displayed. Either switch sides or die. Shizuka continued, pointing his blade at the two. The Arrancar growled and pulled out their blades. Suit yourselves. Finder vs Ganju. The noble stood across from a blonde figure with his mask acting as a helmet covering his head and eyes with a chin strap keeping it on. He had large shoulder pads with thigh-high boots and knife extensions on his wrists. Ganju glared at his opponent while surveying the surrounding area. Before we begin, I want to ask you something. The Arrancar stated. Ganju reached behind him and pulled out his canteen before gesturing for the Arrancar to continue. What seat are you? Name's Ganju Shiba, 3rd seat of Squad 14. The Shiba man answered before taking a few mouthfuls from the container. Yours. Ganju returned as he put the canteen back. Finder Callias, Arrancar #24. The Fraxion answered back. 3rd seat you said? Then I'll fight at a 3rd seat's level. Ganju shrugged and pulled out his Ajashika, already in Shikai. Fine by me. He told the Arrancar, getting ready for combat. This is where I'm supposed to tell you, switch sides and you'll live, but something tells me you'll decline. Finder merely grinned as he unsheathed his blade. Exacta. He said before dashing toward Ganju. The Shiba man smiled before throwing a bag at the charging Arrancar, who slashed it in half and ended up with a face full of red dust. What the? He started before coughing up a storm. It burns. He yelled out as his eyes began to water under his mask. The only other sensation was something that felt rough and gritty tearing across his waist. He felt another attack coming and dodged out of the way and onto a building. What was that? Finder demanded between coughs. Shiba-style super spicy pepper bomb. Ganju answered, removing bits of cloth from his blade. I'm not exactly the strongest or the fastest, so I need to make up my lack of fighting skills with clever tricks. I don't exactly play fair. He pulled out his canteen again and drank some more, Finder recognizing a slight rise in his opponent's Reishi. I also burn through my energy like no one's business, so I appreciate you giving me the chance to replenish. He put the container away and got ready to fight again. And I also appreciate you fighting at a weaker level. If you really think that level of power is a 3rd seat, then I might as well be a captain. I'd like to say that I'm happy you noticed. Finder said, his mouth set in a grimace. I am indeed still holding back and will get much stronger. He began breaking off pieces of his mask until 3/4 ths of the mask was removed, revealing a single gray eye surrounded by purple markings. I would get incrementally stronger, but you said you don't play fair. He flashed in front of Ganju and punched him in the stomach, the dagger piercing into his flesh, before sending him flying through a window in a nearby building. I'll let you replenish your Ryotsu though. Finder called out as Ganju got out of the building, bleeding from numerous scratches. It wouldn't be an interesting fight if you died because you ran out of energy. Abirama vs Ikeku. I'm gonna break you. The Arrancar called out. He had no jacket, only sleeves, and his body was covered in red tattoos with a beak-shaped mask resting on his head. Gonna kill you. Gonna kill you. Gonna kill you. He kept on yelling in some sort of pre-fight ritual. His opponent on the other hand. Lucky, lucky, lucky. Lucky, lucky, lucky. Ikeku sang as he did his pre-fight dance. Me. He finished, with his traditional pose, as the two waited for the other. What the hell was that? The Arrancar yelled, completely perturbed by the bald man's dance. That was my lucky dance. Ikeku responded, thinking it was obvious. I tend to do that when I feel like a good fight is coming my way. I let you do your thing, so what's the problem? My ritual was meant to psych us up. We both shout about how much we're gonna beat each other up to get us in the mood. He continued, getting more annoyed than anything else. That's fair. The lieutenant conceded, understanding the need to get the blood pumping. Squad 11 members are always excited for a fight, but if this helps you then sure, I'll do your ritual. Just one thing first. Ikeku said with a smirk. The name is Ikeku Madarame, Lieutenant of Squad 11. Yours. Lord Baragon's number 1 Fraxion. Arrancar number 22, Abirama Redder. He shouted, already feeling like he was getting back into the mood. Now, let's do it. I'm gonna crush you, Ikeku Madarame. I'll remind you said that when I'm beating your skull in, Abirama redder. Ikeku shouted back. So much better when we know each other's names, isn't it? It really is. I'm already raring to go. Redder returned, feeling restless as his blood pumped through his entire body. Let's do this. Ikeku shouted as the two charged at each other. Abirama threw a punch, Ikeku swung his sheath. The greater reach granted to Ikeku won him first blood with a loud crack. The two separated, though Ikeku kept up the offensive, still aiming to strike down the Arrancar who took a few more hits. Soon Ikeku jumped back when Abirama started shaking, chuckling in amusement. I should have joined you in that dance of yours. 'Cause now I feel lucky. Redder said, bearing a more manic smile. Scalp, Aguila. He shouted as a torrent of wind wrapped around him for a few seconds before two large, red wings revealed the changed Arrancar. His mask completely covered his head, feathers covered his body, and his hands and feet gained bird-like claws. Let's have some fun, Madarame. He cried out as he took flight. With pleasure. Ikeku called out before slamming sword and sheath together. Extend, Hojikameru. Charlotte vs Yumichika. Okay, okay. A drag queen Arrancar sang while doing stylish poses and clapping. His Majesty, Lord Barragon's, #1 Fraxion is here. Charlotte Chilauern. He had long, wavy, black hair, large glossy lips, and blue eyes with his mask as a tiara. He wore a loose pants with a small white top that exposed much of his body. Charlotte was about to continue, until he noticed that his lone audience member had his eyes shut. Silence please. Yumichika said, unsheathing his Zanpakuto. I'm communing with my Zanpakuto. Fine. Chilauern said with a pout. But that was rude, ignoring my beautiful entrance like that. Though I guess it's fair, being taken by the sight of one as lovely as me. He said, just as he was impaled by 6 beams of light. Bakudo number 61, Rikuyukoro. Yumichika said, after casting the incantation quickly and quietly. Actually, my Zanpakuto and I were talking of how ugly you were and that it would be best if you became fertilizer instead. Now the annoyed pout was replaced with shock and rage. Ugly. The Arrancar yelled out. How dare you dash? Bakudo number 37, Tsurubashi. Yumichika interrupted again, throwing a ball of blue light that wrapped around the Arrancar's mouth and solidified into a tight mask. Normally I'd fight without Kido, but I feel the need to end this quickly. Tear in frenzy, Ruriiro Kyojaku. He unsheathed his blade and released the glowing vines of his sword's Trushikai, wrapping around the helpless Arrancar and sprouting the buds of the soon-to-be flowers. Goodbye and reincarnate as something truly beautiful this time. The Shinigami said as the Arrancar felt his life being sucked away. Pow vs Amagai. Amagai stood across a tall giant of an Arrancar, easily towering over him and every other Soul Reaper. The mask was a plate going across his square jaw with 2 short horns jutting from the edges with some odd green triangles on his cheeks. His uniform was more stylized in a Chinese fashion with no discernible hollow hole or Zanpakuto. You are, really big. Amagai said, trying to get a read on the stone-faced hollow. Indeed. The Arrancar agreed, looking down at the lieutenant. Are you really my opponent? Amagai offered a friendly smile. Shusuke Amagai, lieutenant of Squad 14. You're welcome to check for yourself. He offered, something the Arrancar seemed to like. Very well. He said, raising fist to strike at the Soul Reaper. I'm Ko Neng Pao. Arrancar number 25. And this is my punch. He threw his huge fist at Amagai, which Amagai easily deflected and returned his own into Pao's stomach. The force of the attack actually pushed the Arrancar back a bit. I think I'd best end this quickly. Amagai thought as Pao started laughing. Not bad considering your size. He said with a grin. Amagai continued smiling. That was actually a force of habit. He said, unsheathing his Zanpakuto. I used to be part of the Onmitsukido, where martial arts were mandatory. It looked like you just had power behind your punch instead of any technique. Shame, I was hoping for a challenge. Pao's grin was slowly growing into an annoyed sneer. Is that so? he asked, pulling out his Zanpakuto from inside his sleeve, something that was like a toothpick compared to the wielder. Yep. Bankai. Amagai said as a wall of flames surrounded the pair. Reika Guankeiku. His Zanpakuto took the form of a large red hook blade with jagged edges on the inside and a large white shell covering the hilt. The red of the blade was glowing red with heat as fire spewed out of the shell. Pow was stunned with disappointment. Bankai? That is your Bankai? He asked, sounding let down after hearing about how impressive the final release was supposed to be. Yep. Amagai replies, his blade already in Pow's body before he knew what happened. The blade heated up as the pain stunned the Aaron car from moving. Gon Ryaga. Shusuk said as one by one, geysers of flame burst out from all over the Aaron car's body. Ko Nengpao didn't even have time to scream as he was consumed by the flames and turned to ash. When it was finished, Amagai reverted his blade back to normal and sheathed it. Sorry Captain Love. I still relied on my Bankai. Ikeka vs Abirama. Ikeka was happy when he got his opponent, thinking he found a kindred spirit that longed for the thrill of combat. After his captain learned he had Bankai, he demanded a rematch from his lieutenant that ended without leaving a scratch on the Kenpeki. Said it was fulfilling the promise from their first fight to have a rematch and ending the last fight he expected to have until his and Ichigo's next rematch. Not too long afterward, he begged his captain to train him to become a lieutenant worthy of the Kenpeki. He was happy to make progress under his captain's brutal tutelage and happy that he found something that lived for the thrill of combat like him. He was disappointed and furious as Abirama Redder only fought at a distance with steel like feathers shooting down at the bald lieutenant. Is this really the fight you were talking about? Ikeka yelled at his opponent, dodging another barrage of steel feathers. Was all that talk just hype? His words gave Redder pause, just as he was about to unleash another strike. I said I was going to crush you. Abirama returned, yelling at the same volume. What's wrong with how I fight? You got me all excited for an up-close and personal battle, the furious dance of death as we swing our blades at each other. The lieutenant explained, resting his staff on his shoulder. How can that happen if all you're doing is shooting your stinking feathers down at me? You're not a real warrior. You're a coward. Abirama actually flinched before seething in anger. I am no coward. He roared defiantly, getting ready to fire another barrage at Ikeku. Then get down here and prove it. The Soul Reaper simply said, once again giving the Aaron car pause. Fine, I'll do that. He said, before stabbing himself in his chest markings and tracing their patterns. When finished, he began to glow with power before another pair of wings burst from his back. Get ready, cause I'm coming for you Ikeku Madarame. He said with silent fury. I plan on it. Bankai. Ikeku returned with his own quiet anger while summoning his Bankai and enveloped in the whirlwind as red energy flowed around him. He soon held the triple blades of his final release and was ready to charge when the dragon pulsated and completely filled. Hojikameru? Everything all right? He asked his Zanpakuto as he got ready to fight. The only response he received was the red cackling energy dragons roaring at Abirama. Talking a big game but none of the skill to back it up and none of the guts to actually put himself in danger? Yeah, that'd do it. Reminds me too much of my damned faults. Ikeku conceded as he filled himself with power. Ryomen Hojikameru. He roared, feeling his earlier excitement return. Come at me Ika-dash. Abirama roared as he charged toward the Shinigami, only for Ikeku to fly past him and slicing off Redder's wings with his Guandeo. Abirama gasped in pain as he felt his wings and primary weapons sever from his body. He slammed into the building and through a couple of floors before landing on another building. He pushed himself up as all of his excitement was replaced with fear, now seeing that he was at a disadvantage, as Ikeku showed up in the building. Wait. I heard that Soul Society is recruiting. I'll switch sides. He pleaded before Ikeku charged and slammed his spade into Abirama's chest, cutting him in half. We don't have room for cowards. Ikeku returned as he undid his Bankai and letting the two halves of the Aaron car fall to the ground. Man, I was really unlucky today. He said as he left his opponent to die. Ganju vs Finder. The fight was not going well for the noble. Finder decided that he had enough of Ganju's tricks and bombs and released his resurrection while removing most of his mask. The result gave him 2 lobster pincers, the right one being huge while the left was little more than a gauntlet. The third seat was bleeding from numerous cuts and missing a chunk of his arm after getting hit with some high-pressured water blasts. But, the Aaron-Carr did keep his word and let Ganju take a break to drink from his canteen. That's where they currently were, Finder standing strong and Ganju taking the last mouthful of his canteen. "Out of whatever you've been drinking?" Finder asked, smiling at the idea that the annoying ant could finally be crushed. Ganju gave his canteen a few experimental shakes to confirm that it was truly empty. Through his blood-loss hazy eyes, he surveyed their surroundings. "Yeah, we might as well end this," he admitted, sticking his canteen on his back. "I know I don't deserve this, but you mind if we settle this man-to-man in an honest duel?" he asked, taking note of some parts of a building falling apart. "And why should I?" Finder demanded, glaring at his opponent who held out his arms. "Out of bombs and it's only a matter of time before I run out of reishi," Ganju said, sounding pathetic. Not hard when he was already bleeding to death. "Do whatever you want afterward but let me die a man with some honor," he pleaded as he jumped down to the streets and held his Zanpakuto out, ready to fight. Finder sighed as he landed across from Ganju. "Very well, you sorry excuse for a Shinigami," the Aaron-Carr said as he leveled his pincer. "I'll grant you that." Before he could charge, the ground gave way beneath him in an ever-expanding pit made of sand. Within seconds, he was trapped in the very center and buried to his chest with more sand pouring in from the side. "You said you were out of tricks. That you wanted to die with honor," he roared in anger, swinging his arms in an attempt to free himself. "I said I was out of bombs," he heard Ganju reply as he appeared at the edge, looking down at Finder. "I never said I was out of tricks. You should have seen this coming. Was anything you said to me the truth?" Finder demanded as Ganju straightened out, as if he finally had a chance to catch his breath. "Yeah. I do burn through my reishi very quickly and I do rely on tricks and traps," Ganju admitted. "My Zanpakuto can create and manipulate sand, but doing so is taxing in proportion to the amount of sand I'm controlling," he explained as the pit expanded to the bases of 2 tall buildings, causing them to buckle and collide. The pieces that fell off landed in the pit and collapsed into more sand, making Finder's eyes widen. "Yep, you guessed it," the noble said with a smirk. "You've been surrounded by my sand since we came here." "Since the start of our fight?" the Aaron-Carr asked, a creeping sense of despair climbing into his head. "Since this replica town was made," Ganju returned. "I've been chugging a reishi restoration potion for over a week, waiting for this chance." He dispelled his shikai, sheathing his Zanpakuto and letting the entire city block collapse into sand. Ganju barely escaped with Shunpo, while Finder's screams were silenced in the avalanche. "Sorry to do it that way. Getting buried alive is nothing short of horrific," he said before pulling out a flare and lighting it. Then he collapsed. Homura and Shizuka vs Joe and Nirga. Joe and Nirga were already in bad shape, even with the power of their resurrections. Joe's had a more tiger-esque pattern with squared blades at his wrists and another attached to a ponytail he grew. Nirga became a green elephantor. Though he still had his normal head, he did also have a long trunk while his helmet had more pronounced tusks. Enhanced speed, enhanced strength, did not aid them too much when they were unable to predict the movements of their opponents. "Damn brats!" Joe yelled, slashing at Homura, who faded into black smoke just before the blade could touch her. He saw a wisp of smoke forming above him and dashed toward it, expecting to catch his prey at her most vulnerable. It wasn't until he was within arm's length did a building fall out of it, trapping him underneath it as it fell back to the earth. Shizuka was decidedly less playful than his sister as he swerved and dodged every swing made at him and countering with another slash. "You scrawny bastard!" Nirga yelled, swinging his trunk at Shizuka, who twisted around the appendage and hooked his scythe blade underneath it and leaving a nasty gash. As Nirga clutched his nose in pain, Shizuka disappeared in black smoke and reappeared on a building some ways away from the Aaron-Carr and was soon joined by Homura. "Why do we have to be so weak?" Homura complained as Joe broke free from the rubble he was trapped under. "All we're doing is lightly cutting them." Big Sis Kyokaka would be frustrated if she saw us now. I'm sure she knows that Captain Yukatake wanted to prioritize our ability to channel Reishi. Shizuka reminded his sister of their tutelage under the kindly captain. Besides, haven't even used our hollow masks yet. How about we go further? Homura asked, looking over in the direction of the other Shiba clan member. Big Bro Ganju already finished his fight. The boy looked to his sister, already understanding what her plan was. Alright, but who should fight? He asked before Homura hugged him. Very well. I promise I won't be long. He said as the pair were engulfed in the black smoke and the rise in Ryotsu alerting the two Aaron car. The two wasted no time charging and firing their Zero, only for them to be hit by a blast of dark energy as Shizuka stood tall with his skull mask over his face. The next instant, he was between them and swinging his blade. Nirga dodged while Joe slashed, but was intercepted by the shaft of the polearm weapon like Shizuka knew the attack was coming. Growling in fury, Joe's canine fangs on his mask pointed to Shizuka and fired like bullets to the wizard, who leaned back to dodge and kick off Vega's chest. As he flew back, Nirga caught him in a death grip bear hug and began to crush the wizard. This is the end. Joe yelled as he charged a Zero, Nirga bracing himself to take the blast to ensure their enemy gets vaporized. As the blast of energy closed in on the pair, Shizuka teleported out of Nirga's grip and reappeared behind the Aaron car. The Fraxion took the full blast of his ally's attack and when the Zero blast died down, he swung his scythe and sliced the mammoth in half before releasing his own energy blast at the apex of the swing and striking Joe. The saber-tooth Aaron car fell to the earth and landed with a crash. Shizuka looked down on his fallen adversary and used his power to teleport several more buildings above him and dropped the many tons of rubble down on the Aaron car. Black smoke engulfed him again and the siblings were two people again. "Whew, that takes a lot out of me." Homura panted as the exhaustion hit the pair. "We should get out of the way and recover. We're no good to anyone as we are now," Shizuka advised as they made their way to Ganju. Chapter 75, Winter War Isolation, Age, and Sacrifice. Ishine vs Stark. To most fighters, it was a furious battle. Every swing creating a shower of sparks as the blades collided and shockwaves of force that rocked the very air. The battling duo blitzing around the area as they continued to struggle against each other. To the wiser and more experienced fighters, the two were simply putting on a show. Instead of putting any effort into killing each other, Stark asked if they could just fake it since he wasn't in any real mood to fight and Ishine agreed since he'd rather try to get the Espada to change sides. Those two. Stark thought as he kept an eye on the other fights, particularly the siblings. Are they like me? He barely managed to block a swing from Ishine as the two continued to clash. This one is strong, so are many of the captains. Was I just unlucky to be where the strong are forced to be alone? Something on your mind, Aaron Carr? Ishine asked, breaking the Primera out of his thoughts just before flicking him in the head and sending him flying through a couple of buildings. Lilynette wanted to attack the captain that struck her partner, but some surprisingly quick action from Stark stayed her hand as he attacked the captain. Am I that easy to read? He asked lazily as the two continued their dance of blades, occasionally throwing in a punch or a kick. Comes from being a dad. Especially to a teenager and girls. Ishine returned as he dodged a sudden Zero blast that Stark released without any build-up. And you were really interested in Homura and Shizuka's fight. The two stopped and analyzed the other. You know, we wouldn't need to fight if you were willing to change sides. Stark narrowed his eyes and dashed at Ishine, exerting actual effort and throwing the captain off guard before throwing him into a building. It wasn't a second later that the Soul Reaper struck him with a hard kick to the head that sent him tumbling. Mercy. He wondered, remembering the years and years of isolation he suffered because of his own strength. And this is supposed to be the father of that kid that invaded Las Noches? A kid that Aizen seems hesitant to fight. How is it that Ichigo kid can have so many companions if he is strong? He unknowingly whispered aloud as they clashed again. It's because he has companions that my son is strong. Ishine spoke out, freezing the Aaron car with the absurdity of the idea. Ichigo made sure to become strong so that he could protect his companions and then did the next important step, ensuring that he could control that power. The fight stopped as Stark processed those words, turning to look at his only companion in his life. his other half and Fraction Lilynet, who sat on a nearby building and waited for Stark to need her. The one he created to free himself from his isolation, further aided by Aizen giving him a people in the Espada. Now here he was, once again being offered a group and more companions, but he would have to betray his first savior for a possibility. Rangiku, Senna, and Momo vs Trace Bestias. So, 3 of us against 3 of them. Matsumoto asked as Senna and Momo blasted through a Jillian and began to close in on the female trio of Aaron Carr. Are we still recruiting, by the way? I think so. Momo answered as she began to spin a Kido net for any future traps she wished to use. But I don't think they're willing to betray their masters. Just then, Senna jumped past them with her usual manic pixie smile. I'm on it. She loudly cheered as she got in front of the trio of Aaron Carr women. Sup. Name's Senna Shiba of Squad 15. She happily announced to the girls. Question, what would it take to get you nice ladies to switch sides? This got them to stop and look at Senna like she was insane. Is this bitch for real? The black-haired girl with heterochromia eyes asked her allies. Her mask was a vertical headband with a single horn on her head. The other 2 were a dark-skinned Amazon woman with long wavy black hair and a 3-pronged crown with a thick necklace as her mask wearing little more than a tube top and pants, and another woman with long olive green hair in a long-sleeved dress with 3 pink dots under her right eye with her mask resembling a hair clip. What the hell is going through her head? Looks like Soul Society really is recruiting like that Kurosaka kid said. The Amazon returned, glaring at Senna who was still smiling and waiting for an answer. But they must be insane to think that we'd ever betray Lady Haribel. If you recall, Ichigo Kurosaka's group was making that offer to the Espada as well. The long-haired girl reminded them. They might try to convince Lady Haribel to defect as well. Which, by the way, is the only way we'd accept your offer, Miss Shiba. She continued, making her fellow Aaron Carr nod at the truth of her words while Senna pondered the matter. I see, she whispered while Hinamori and Rangiku circled around and continued the distraction, then what would need to happen for her to switch sides? The 3 Aaron Carr looked at each other, having a silent discussion on the matter. Lady Haribel joined Aizen for the power to protect us. The Amazon answered for them. You'd need to convince her that she wouldn't be making a poor decision or sacrificing others for power. Sounds like she and Ichigo would get along great. Senna returned, smiling at how alike the female Espada and the hybrid protector were. What are your names? Emilu Apasai, Aaron Carr 54. The tomboy answered first. Frank S. Camila Rose, hashtag 55. The Amazon continued. Number 56, Cyan Sung Sun. The olive-haired girl finished. I'll be sure to remember that for when we become friends. Senna nodded in response. Till then, this is gonna hurt. She jumped back, surprising the 3 as they were soon tied up in a multilayer Kido net that originated from both Momo and Rangiku. Burst. Hinamori said as she tapped her released Zanpakuto against the Kido and sent the explosion coursing through the cords. Toshiro vs Haribel. The young captain and dark-skinned Espada clashed, the 2 giving a fragment of attention to the latter's fraction as Toshiro tried to think of a way to end the fight either quickly or peacefully. He was faring much better in his Shikai since training with Ichigo while the Espada had yet to use her resurrection. Is that true? The young captain asked as he and the shark got in a blade lock. What those 3 said, is it true? The stoic Aaron Carr narrowed her eyes before kicking the young captain back. It's a foolish idea to try and talk me into changing sides in the middle of a fight, Captain. She responded, charging power through her blade. Hola Azul. She shot a blast of energy at her opponent, who narrowly dodged and clipped his shoulder. I don't need to talk to you. Toshiro responded, earning a raised eyebrow from the Espada. If what they said is true, then you are going to willingly change sides when Ichigo shows up. You believe he's stronger than Lord Aizen? She asked as the fight between them actually stopped. I think Aizen is afraid of him, Hitsugaya returned, and that's why he chose to attack while Ichigo is in Hueco Mundo. The Espada looked to her master, currently fighting back against the head captain and Urahara, and wondered if what the ice dragon said was true. Her thoughts were interrupted when she saw her fraction engulfed in an explosion before turning to glare at Hitsugaya. We're still fighting, but they won't be killed. He returned before sending a swarm of ice dragons at her. You'd best be telling the truth. Destroy. She commanded before getting engulfed in a shell of water that smashed the dragons to bits. Tiburon. Tessie vs Baragan. And who are you, Aunt? The elderly Espada asked his opponent. A tanned man in a dark blue robe with a wide raised collar and staff in hand. Off to the side was a larger, more rotund figure with pink hair and dark pink robes. Aizen gave you info on all the current captains and people of interest, but I don't recall you ever coming up in any briefing. The tanned man glared at the Aaron car through his shades, before slouching over with a cloud of depression hanging over him. I do seem to be forgotten easily. Tessie moaned, wiping away some tears from his eyes. But I suppose that is the price to pay, considering my position. He said before straightening out and facing the former Hollow King. Haki. I may need to cut loose, give us a barrier. He ordered, earning a nod from the man who began to wave his hands around and casting his spells. Ryabai no Yomon, Koko no Yomon, Kigai no Yomon, Hoyoku no Yomon. Haki chanted, creating a large door, a large black watermill, a honeycomb-patterned shield of hexagons, and a fanning red ring connected by a single obelisk that soon entrapped the pair in a massive black rectangular cube. Shiju no Samon. I am Tessie Tsukabishi, and I will be your opponent. Tessie introduced with a slight bow. Do I get to know the name of my opponent? The scarred elder grunted before hefting a large double-headed battle axe on his shoulder. Very well, I'll give you the courtesy. I am Baragan Luzenbern, the Segunda Espada and rightful king of Hueco Mundo. He declared, stretching his body in preparation to crush his opponent. If you are the rightful king, could you be persuaded to join the Soul Society in killing Aizen? Tessie offered, hoping for a peaceful solution. And fall under Soul Society's reign? I'll pass. Baragan denied, appearing directly in front of Tessie and slamming his knee into the Kido Master's stomach. Tessie flew across the barrier and slammed into the shell of one of the main barrier points, coughing up blood as his ribs cracked and punctured his lungs. I don't intend to fall under anyone's rule ever again. I won't just retake my throne, I will be the god of both Hueco Mundo and Soul Society. With my power, I'll have my revenge on Aizen and crush all who would stand against me. He roared, appearing before Tessie again and swung his axe down. The Kido Master barely had time to block and struggled through the pain in his chest to throw the Aaron car off. If that's what you think, then you really can't be an ally. Tessie groaned out before blasting Baragan back with a nameless Sakasui. The plan is for Ichigo Kurosaka to become the new king of Hueco Mundo and instill someone loyal to him as the one to lead Hueco Mundo as it becomes a new branch of the Godei. He finished healing himself with Kido before settling into a battle stance. And you made it clear you'd still be an enemy. You really think you stand a chance against me? The former king scoffed before Tessie appeared at his side, with his palm ready to slam into Baragan's head. However, before he could make contact, Tessie felt his attack slow down. In that confusion, Baragan slammed his fist into Tessie's ribs once again and snapped a few more of those bones. Tessie dashed away and thrust his staff at the Espada and cast a nameless Kakireko, sending hundreds of green energy bolts at his opponent. As he did that, he also kept a close watch on Baragan. He was dodging every single attack that came close, but the really interesting detail was that those same attacks seemed to slow down in mid-flight. Gravity control? He wondered, trying to figure out what was happening. No, the bolts kept along their paths with no change in trajectory. Air density? That would also include more noticeable changes. Could it be? Are you trying to figure out my power? Baragan asked, finding amusement in the futility of Tessie's attacks. If I had to guess, you manipulate time. Correct. Tessie said, earning a small look of surprise from the Espada. That is correct. All of the Espada are granted a power based on their aspect of death. My aspect is age, or time as you've said. The most powerful and inevitable of all the aspects. He said, holding up his free hand. With just a touch I can make your very bones rot. He then held his axe out. But why touch, when I can just will it? Rot, arroganti. he said before engulfing himself in black flames and becoming a skeleton in a large purple cloak with black fur hems with an ornate gold crown and bracelets. That is indeed a form befitting a king of the dead. Tessai admitted, letting go of his staff. My applause to your grace. He clapped 3 times, but on the third, as he pulled his hands apart, a green bar of light appeared and glowed with increasing intensity until it flashed away. But, now that I know your powers, this battle is mine. How arrogant of you! Respira. Baragan said, with an ethereal layer to his gravely voice, before sending a wave of black mist at the Kido Master. There is nothing you can do before my power. All things age and rot with time. Flesh decays, plants wither, stones crumble, and Kido fades. The mist engulfed Tessai, who did not move in the face of the attack. I will take your life in penance for insulting a god. He said before laughing, basking in his victory over the Kido Master. Until he heard the voice of the dead man. Heido number 88, Hiryogekazoku Shinten Reiho. The spell blitzed through the mist and blasted a hole straight through Baragan's torso. As he doubled over and screamed in pain, he saw the unharmed and unaged body of Tessai coming out of the mist. How? Nothing can withstand the rod of age. What did you do? Baragan demanded, already feeling the drain on his life from the mortal blow. You are right that Kido does fade with time. But it is such a versatile art, Tessai returned, brushing away some of the mist still clinging to him. And you are not the first one to understand the power of time. Soul Reapers have toyed with the idea and the practice long before you. The difference is, we fear and respect that power over time is risky and should never be done unless under the most dire of circumstances. That light. Baragan gasped in realization. What did you do? Create a time reversal field around yourself. Nothing of the sort. Tessai responded before pointing at the only unobstructed wall in the barrier, revealing another barrier surrounding their battlefield, with Haki wearing his hollow mask and holding his arms out. That would be the work of that Jikutaiko barrier my partner had created, mainly to keep the barrier we are fighting in stable. No, what I did completely nullified your powers within this space. Jikantaishi, the Kido that stops time. Though the skull was expressionless, Tessai could swear he saw the shock on the espada which slowly shifted to rage. How can I rot, or my Kido fade, when time does not move? Curse you! He roared before bringing out a pitch-black and more vicious-looking battle axe. Rot! 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 The skeleton yelled out, swinging his axe and sending wave after wave of his aging mist. Nothing can stand before my power. Nothing can defeat me. I am Go Dash. He kept yelling before he noticed he was being engulfed in a black box. Kyokantanai. Tessai calmly cast as he teleported the Kuro Hitsuji spell outside of the barriers. Seeping crest of turbidity. Arrogant vessel of lunacy. Boil forth and deny. Grow numb and flicker. Disrupt sleep. Crawling queen of iron. Eternally self-destructing doll of mud. Unite. Repulse. Fill with soil and know your own powerlessness. Heido number 90, Kuro Hitsuji. He chanted as the box seemed to grow more intense until it imploded. Tessai released the spell and Baragan re-entered a normal time flow, just as his body crumbled to dust. Tessai went over to where Haki was and spoke to him through the barrier. Maintain your time regression barrier. I'm about to release the Jikantaishi. Understood. Haki said as he poured more energy into the spell as the Shijo no Seimon faded and the full force of Baragan's aging mist struck Tessai. He roared in pain as his body decayed and regenerated until all the mist was reversed from existence, leaving the Kido Master to fall from his place. Commander Tessai! The wizard yelled out, using Shunpo to catch his commander and carry him to one of the buildings. Tessai was shaking from the pain, but managed to focus on their next task. I'll be fine, Haki. Tessai growled, forcing himself to his feet. I just won't be able to fight anymore today. Let's head to wherever Squad 4 set up the aid station. We'll help them for now. Understood, sir. Haki said, catching Tessai just as he passed out. Rest now, you've had a hard fight. With Senna, Rainjiku, and Momo. Wow, you girls look mad. Senna said as the smoke from the explosion cleared to reveal the three Fraxion in their resurrection states, glaring furiously at her. "We are still enemies, remember?" she asked, just before the three were engulfed in a swirling tornado of blade dash. "Now to take you out of the fight so you don't accidentally die," she said, rising above the spinning ash field and twirling her staff to create a whirlwind tunnel to add to Rangiku's own field. "Don't underestimate us, you bitch." A Passai growled as a crimson light appeared and exploded, dispelling the tornado of wind and ash. Senna, Rangiku, and Momo were sent flying in opposite directions before righting themselves and seeing the Fraxion tear off one arm each. "Quimera Parka!" All three called out as their severed limbs came together and slowly mixed until a new being appeared. A massive muscled figure with a deer skull in the center of the head with a long green snake tail and brown fur covering most of its body and cloven hooves for feet. Its empty black gaze seemed fixated on Senna, who froze in terror, flashing back to Genryu, easily defeating her. Time slowed to a crawl as the beast dashed forward with its hand out. Before it could connect, another being appeared and pushed her out of the way, taking the strike itself. "You stupid girl!" Zaraki growled as he appeared beside Senna. The furry monster of his Sanpo Kanjo crawling out of the rubble of a building and dispersing into smoke. "Can't you tell when you're outmatched? You should have been running, not standing there gawking." The beast turned its attention to Kenpeki, who bore a savage smile as he brought up his blade. "Just watch." He walked toward the monster while Rangiku and Momo went to Senna, the latter checking her over for injuries. "As much as I don't like how he put it, he's not wrong," Rangiku said as the three watched Zaraki challenge the beast. "But, then again, when was the last time he felt fear?" "That would be when I told him I wanted a child," they heard Anohana say from behind them, looking at the former Kenpeki with a mix of joy and confusion. "Watch carefully, you three. We are trying to gain allies, but we are still fighting." They returned their gaze to Zaraki, just as the monster threw a punch. The Kenpeki didn't budge even a little before twisting the monster's arm and cutting him into pieces with two swings. "Pathetic!" he yelled, grabbing the deer skull and crushing it in his grip. Shortly after that, the trace bestias attacked him. Not even scratching the man known as Kenpeki. "I just told the other brat, know when you're out of your league," he said quietly, with a clear message of death in his tone. The Fraxion backed off, feeling the cold touch of killing intent, while Zaraki scoffed and went back to crowd control with the Jillians. Senna watched as the 11th squad captain left, remembering the last time she needed to be saved because she was weak. She tightened her grip on her Morokumaru and dashed forward, striking a Passai in the stomach while Rangiku followed and took Mila Rose, leaving Momo with Sung Sun. "We're your opponents," Momo declared, holding up to Byam as the spirit manifested beside her. "Now let's fight." Rangiku returned, doing the same with Hanko. "Why can't I do that?" Senna cried, seeing how far behind she was. Toshiro vs Haribel. Seconds after Haribel released her resurrection, going from a somewhat modest appearance to a more revealing mini-skirt with thigh-high boots and rather small armor covering the underside of her breasts and nipples with big spalders and a small collar, wielding a massive pata or gauntlet sword, Toshiro released his Bankai. Something that did not tip things in Hitsugaya's favor, as Haribel was one of the Espada that took training seriously. Every speck of ice was turned to water and vice versa, powers were their stalemate. The difference was that Haribel had more speed, strength, and experience. For as much of a prodigy Toshiro was, he still couldn't fully utilize the power of Hyarin Meru, having only learned the true power of the blade after getting his Zanpakuto spirit back. "This is so dammit," he mentally cursed as he tried to fly around the Espada, only for her to use Sonido to intercept and slash at him. He managed to block the brunt of the attack with his sword and thick ice, so instead of getting cleaved, it was like getting hit with a club that sent him flying. While trying to right himself, she shot dozens of high-pressured water bullets that tore his ice away just as fast as he regenerated it. He examined the ice petals floating behind him, a mix of time and power exertion eroding each one away. "Ichigo, please show up. If Hyarin Meru is right, I can't promise she'll live." He was down to his last three. "You're the one that said we're still fighting," Haribel said, as Toshiro sensed a massive amount of water above him. "Cascada." The water blasted toward him like a high-pressured power geyser, thicker than any of the buildings around them. This is bad. Toshiro said as he created a thick shell of some of the coldest ice he could muster, eating away another petal as he did so. The water slammed into his barrier and he felt the ice erode away with every drop. He did what he could to keep it up, but cracks formed in the shield with some jets hitting the captain like multiple fire hoses, until chunks of his own ice struck him from the water. Some cutting, some stabbing, some applying blunt force trauma, until the ice shattered and he was crushed under tons of rushing water, leaving one last crumbling petal. We are not allies yet, as you believe we would become. Haribo lectured the captain as he forced himself to his feet. And why should I join a side with someone as weak as yourself among its leaders? The final petal dissolved and the temperature dropped to freezing. Because my true power isn't fully matured. Toshiro said, now as a tall, lanky adult without the ice wings. He seemed to struggle to stand, but Haribo had no doubt he was now 100 times more dangerous. She raised her blade and he flicked his wrist at her, freezing her blade and arm completely. You should stand down now. Komamura vs Tuan. Tuan. Enough of this madness. Come to your senses. Komamura yelled out as he and Tuan clashed, the astral bolus he used now in a smaller form he now held in hand. How is any of this the justice you preached of? Tuan dodged and blocked every attack with an accuracy that bordered on foresight. I told you of my friend, did I not? Tuan asked, standing firm in his choice. For the peaceful world she desired, for my goals to be met, this is the path I must take. He was about to perform a counter-attack when he felt the presence of his former captain, prompting him to jump out of the way and avoid the gust of razor winds. And what goal is that, Tuan? Kensei asked, spinning around his knife. If it is justice, the Soul Reapers have undergone a massive change. Yes. Komamura immediately agreed, hoping to use this line of thought to save his friend. Many that were imprisoned unjustly were freed, the nobles are now subject to the law, and the barrier between the Siraidai and Rukon districts is almost completely gone. Tokinada Tsunayashiro, the man that killed your friend, was finally arrested. At that, Tuan froze. The man his friend married, the man that killed her with no repercussions, was arrested. And he still lives? Tuan asked after a long pause, hate that was masked now making its way forth. That Soul Reaper still lives. Komamura was stunned when Tuan said Soul Reaper with open disgust. And now your intent is revealed. Kensei said, not even shocked at Kaname's rage and maintaining his calm for the coming fight. Easy to fool others when you use the word justice, isn't it? This was never about justice as a concept, but your own personal justice. Or more accurately, your revenge. Komamura gasped in shock at Kensei's declaration. I'm not denying that there were, and still are, problems with the way Soul Society operates, but that is true of all systems. You want Tsunayashiro dead for killing your friend and you want to destroy the system that let him get away with it. How pointless. At that, Tuan turned to glare at his former captain. Pointless? He asked, seething in anger. Pointless? Yes, when the Shinigami are dead then I will have my justice, but what about this has been pointless? Because no matter what you do, your friend is still dead. Kensei answered, freezing the traitor. Everything you did, all of it was just to make yourself feel better. Tuan was trembling with rage, mumbling the demand that the wizard be silent. The system that killed your friend has been changed, but not by your actions, and you've alienated every single person that would call you friend. All for one person and a grudge from a past that can't be changed. If she was alive now, she'd do everything in her power to stop you. Komamura growled, coming to terms with the fact that the man he trusted, that he befriended, was never going to change. Tuan couldn't take any more and aimed to cut down Komamura, but was intercepted by Kensei, who donned his mask. Let's do this right and you show us the monster you've become. The wizard demanded, punching the blind man in the face and pushing him back. Show us just how far you went in your quest for vengeance. Tuan said nothing as his hand went to his face, Reishi gathering at his fingers as he slowly donned a hollow mask. No one saw the tear that appeared in the sky. With Yamamoto and Urahara. The head captain wasted no time charging at who was the current biggest threat to the peaceful era he and so many others enjoyed, with the most clever man in all the Godei backing him up to kill the upstart. When he first charged he was attacked by what seemed like a small and innocent child, but he put aside the kindly grandfather and was the leader of the Shinigami. He wasted no time in striking down the boy, not unleashing his Shikai or giving the Arrancar the chance to use whatever powers he may have had. When Aizen saw his plan to get decapitated and punched into oblivion, he immediately unsheathed his blade and silently activated his Shikai. He dodged Yamamoto's next slash and was ready to direct the head captain to attacking his own forces, when he was trapped in place by several black holes. "You can't fool us now," he heard Urahara say before Yamamoto reappeared in front of Aizen and slashed him across the chest, his Kido barriers barely holding as he was cut. The force of the attack actually broke him free of the Kido spell and he immediately got away from the two, feeling his body regenerate from the damage. "It was a risky gamble, but I'm glad it paid off," Kisuke said as the two captains glared at the traitor. "You found a way around my Kyoka Suijutsu?" he asked, thinking back to Ichigo's furious assault in their first fight to prevent him from trapping the hybrid in his hypnosis. "You are the only person that has been subjected to your Shikai, but never stopped by it," Urahara returned, ready to continue the fight. "That means whoever is in contact with that Zanpakuto must be immune to the hypnosis. You left a fragment of your Zanpakuto in Ichigo, which I ground into a fine powder and left a small amount with every captain and lieutenant." "Clever," Aizen admitted as he felt his chest pulse. "I regret that I had forgotten about that. Like how you all seem to have forgotten that I was also a former captain of the Godi I-13. He raised his Zanpakuto, his image seeming to ripple like a water surface. "I will not fall here." Bankai. He shattered like glass as two more copies of him appeared. Yaden no Kagami. The two captains tensed, unable to sense which one was the real Aizen. Just then they felt a strong Ryotsu appear and saw a massive tear in the sky, revealing the massive form of Yami Largo. Check the description for the links to the author.